And we are moving on to lesson 45. This is ratio problems involving totals. Okay, so your objective right here is to solve ratio problems that involve totals. So example 1 says acrobats and clowns converge on the center ring in the ratio of 3 to 5. If a total of 24 acrobats and clowns performed in the center ring, how many were clowns? Okay, so we got your steps listed over here. The first thing we're going to do is set up a ratio box that includes the two things you're comparing and the total. Okay, so if we have two things we're comparing and a total, that means that we're going to need 3 rows to our ratio box. Okay, so I'm going to draw a ratio box. And we always have 2 sides to the ratio box, but we need 3 rows. Okay? And it needs to include the two things that we are comparing. So we know we're comparing acrobats and clowns. And then we have a spot for the total. Okay? On the left-hand side is where we put our ratio. Okay? And then on the right-hand side is where we put, sorry, I should say ratio. Still not any better, but anyway, this says ratio. And then it says, over here we're going to put our actual count. Okay, our actual numbers. So, it says the acrobats and clowns are in a ratio of 3 to 5. That means that the first word, acrobats, is 3, and the second word, clowns, is 5. So acrobats is 3, clowns is 5. Okay? Then from the problem we know that there are a total of 24 acrobats and clowns. So that's the acrobats and clowns together because it says total. So 24 acrobats and clowns will go over here in the actual count side, and it's going to go in the spot that says total because that's the acrobats plus the clowns. It gives us the total amount that we have. Okay? Well, here's how this works here. On this side, this total spot is always going to be these two things added together. So the ratio of acrobats and clowns, 3 to 5, we're just going to add those numbers up to make a total ratio of 8. Okay? Now in the problem, we know that we want to know how many were clowns. That means I'm trying to find the actual number of clowns. So I'm going to put a variable there, okay, and I'm going to put C for clowns, just so I can keep track of what I'm doing here. Alright, now we've got all the information that we need. Alright, so what we're going to do is the spot that says acrobats, we're not worried about the actual number of acrobats. Okay, we're worried about the actual number of clowns. So we're going to cross out the acrobats part. And we're only going to deal with the stuff that's down here. Okay, so that's step 1. We set up our ratio box. Now step 2 says to set up a proportion and solve. So we're going to take this information and set up a proportion that we're going to solve. Okay? And how this works is I'm going to write my proportion with the stuff that is in here. So I'm going to have a proportion that compares clowns to the total people. Okay? And one side is going to come from the ratio side. So I'm going to have clowns over the total, and we're going to set that equal, because it's a proportion, to the actual count side, clowns over 24. Alright, now we've seen these before, so we are going to cross products. 8 times C is 8C equals, and then we're going to do 24 times 5, that is 120. Okay, and then we're going to solve this. We're going to take both sides and divide it by 8. So I'm going to get C equals, and then 120 divided by 8, and that is 15. Okay, so I've got 15 clowns is my answer. We always need to make sure we answer the question. Okay, so 15 clowns. Then if they happen to ask you how many acrobats there are, well, then we got 24 minus 15 will give us 9 acrobats. Okay, and let's go on to the second and last example. Okay, example 2 says a bus company has small and large buses in a ratio of 2 to 7. if the company has 84 large buses, how many buses does it have? Okay, so again, first step is to set up our 3-row ratio box with our 2 columns, one for the ratio side and one for the actual count side. And now we need to label the things that we are comparing. Well, I know it says the bus company has small buses and large buses in the ratio 2:7. So I know I'm comparing small buses and large buses. And then, of course, in the bottom now we have a spot for the total number of buses. This bottom row is always going to be for your total. Okay, the third row is always for the total. So, now we need to fill in what we know. The ratio of small buses to large buses is 2 small buses to 7 large buses. So we're putting that over here. Okay, it says the company has 84 large buses. So that's going to go on the actual count side in the large buses part. So it tells us there's 84 large buses. Okay? Well, now we know that the total ratio, 2 plus 7, is 9. Okay? And the question is asking us, how many buses does it have? Okay, now notice that doesn't say how many small buses or how many large buses. It just says how many buses. That means we're trying to find the total number of buses down here. So I'm just going to put a B for the total number of buses. So we're not concerned about the number of small buses. It doesn't ask us for that. So now we're going to set up our proportion. Okay, so we're going to have the large buses compared to the total buses. And the ratio of those is 7 to 9. 7 large buses for every 9 total buses. And then we're going to have 84 large buses over how many buses in all is what we're going to try to find out. So again, we're doing cross products. 7 times B equals, and then we need to do 84 times 9, which is 756. Okay, and now to solve this, we are going to divide by 7 on both sides and get B equals 108. So our answer is 108 buses. And that is it. Okay, so that's your lesson. If you have any questions, make sure you ask. Otherwise, happy homeworking.